So we're up here in the mountains east of Los Angeles, and it's a beautiful summer day, about, I don't know, middle of July, and I'm up on a third story deck. About, if we dropped, maybe about 40 feet down there, and the railing's not up on the deck yet, so I'm going to be careful here when I'm filming. I don't want to back off, but I've got a door out of this house, and you can see the pieces of it are in here. This is a cabin. It was built in the 1920s, and it's really small, so we had to disassemble our pre-manufactured door. We bought a wood one because we want it to match the architecture of the house, and it also allows us to take it apart. We wouldn't be able to take apart a vinyl door. So I'm going to show you something. When I install these doors, I'm going to show you my number one concern here. And it's down on the side in these corners right here. This corner right here. When it rains, if this door leaks, it's going to leak right there. You can see the metal was rolled up over the sill here. And this corner, if any water gets in here, it's going to get right down through there and into the house. And 9 times out of 10 probably that's where the building leaks, when there is a leak. And I pull a door out and take a look at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to preempt that. Now you can do a metal pan. The pan is just this metal down here. They wrap it up the side, you solder it in. That's really good when we're starting with new construction. But this is very much a retrofit, and I need to tie all of this old paper together, and I want to get back in here. Of course, we'll caulk it really well from the outside, but I want to get this all sealed up. And so what I'm going to use is this. That is in the sun, and you can't see it. This is by Life Paint. Where did all those shadows come from? It's by Life Paint, and it is called 1589. And what it is it's acrylic resin for fiberglass. And this is the fiberglass, and we're going to put it into this corner. We're going to fiberglass it all in, and we're going to fiberglass up the sides and tie all of this together so that when we put the flanges of the new door on, okay, what's going to happen is that we'll have a really good surface to seal to caulk to. And if any water gets past our caulking, it'll get onto this, run onto the fiberglass and out onto the deck. So let's do that. So like I said, this is an acrylic resin for the fiberglass. A lot of companies make this. My personal favorite is made by a company called Life Paint, and they have their Life deck coating materials. I like to use a lot of those when I'm working on this stuff. And so this is just a resin. It's water based, it's acrylic, and we're going to use this to get the fiberglass all stuck to the house, and it'll actually it doesn't turn brittle like boat resin. It actually turns kind of pliable, but it does become waterproof. So I'll finish stirring this up, and then I'll show you how to apply it. So what we're worried about mostly is this corner down here, and then tying all this paper to this surface so that we can glue it. And you can see I started putting some fiberglass on here, and that's really simple. Just get it a little moist first, and I'm doubling this up, so I really want to get that corner taken care of. And then you just it's almost like doing paper mache when you were a kid. And we're worried about this corner, just like corners in concrete, they tend to crack. If you had a square porthole in a, wouldn't be a porthole, it'd be a window in a ship. It cracks there, and that's because you get two different surfaces twisting in opposite directions, and there's any movement. And there's a lot of movement in a house. You've all heard old houses creak and moan, and here we have earthquakes. So this corner, again, metal would be probably preferable, but it's hard to get it tucked back behind everything and attached to the paper in a retrofit situation without pulling off 10 feet of siding in any direction. And then there's no guarantee that you haven't torn that paper there. And so I've been doing it like this for easily 30 years. Had the same phone number for 30 years. Had most of the same clients for 30 years. They had me do one thing one year and another next. And a lot of houses I've built, okay, we'll do this, especially if there's some unusual angles that really make it difficult to get metal in. Now, I've got the paper here, and I'm overlapping the paper, but I'm gluing the paper to the fiberglass. And that ties that paper together, and if there happens to be any nails or screws going through that, this material is a bit pliable whenever it's done. It's not rigid, so it really kind of acts like a gasket around the nail. So it's a very nice process. I've never taken one apart that I've done like this, but I guess it's a good thing because, like I say, I've had the same phone number for 30 years. People definitely would call me if there was a problem. And I do a lot of leak detection in my work. For some reason, people, well, they call me because my stuff doesn't leak, and over the years I've just gotten to know. I've done some, actually did some pretty famous folks' houses, found leaks in them, which is just a very small part of our business. We're a general contracting firm. We build houses, we build mini malls. But this little custom stuff, I kind of enjoy it. Now see this, I'm going to come back and just trim that when it sets up, and the same thing, I'll trim this when it sets up, and I'm going to go around the whole thing, and next thing I'll do is show it to you when I'm done. I'm going to go all the way around it in every direction. So I've installed the fiberglass all the way around the opening of the door and down across the bottom. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim all of this off just with a razor blade. I'll cut it right here and trim it off so it's nice and clean. But here is where it's important. That paper was sticking out from underneath the siding, the old building paper that's underneath the siding was sticking out. I glued that down, and then I wrapped the fiberglass on top of it and glued that, so I know I have no place for the water to get in all the way down. And here's the important part. These corners, and you can see that the corners are wrapped and pushed back way back inside of here on top of that paper. This has a little bit of flex to it, so it'll receive the nails nicely. I will, as I put the door in, the flange will go over the top of here, and I will caulk the whole living bejeebers out of this, and I will caulk the top of this where the sill and threshold set, glue the door to that, and then down here there is no flange on the bottom. The door just hangs out over it. Okay, and that allows anything that comes down to weep out from under the door and onto the deck. We are going to put deck coating on this deck. You can see I resheeted the deck. It has new sheeting. This is an old building, and it just had spaced 1x6 as sheeting down, and it was in pretty bad shape. I pulled it up and resheeted this deck, screwed the deck all in place. We have a nice flat surface, and before it just had roll roofing on this, and that's not really an appropriate deck surface. We're going to put a cement surface on this. It's polymer modified cement. It's a life deck material too. Let's get back in here into the shade. And so before I do that though, I always put just a little bit of layer of cement in front of the door so that it just kicks up just a little bit, and it's kicking up about 1/8 of an inch down to 0, and the deck coating will go over that, and it'll be a little bit of slope in front of the door, and that's because anything that's melting or draining, okay, because in the winter there'll be 2 feet of snow stacked on top of this. So anything that's draining, I want it to drain away from the building and not push up against the building and set. It just increases the potential for problems. It's probably as tight as a bathtub now, but we still want it to pull away, and that little slope will be almost unnoticeable, but it's there, and it just kicks everything away from the door. So now I can install this door and have a perfect watertight seal. I didn't have to peel the old clapboard siding off. I would have ended up replacing all of the paper on the side of this building if I did that, because it's old and brittle and would tear and get perforated, and it's working perfectly fine now. So this is a good way to tie it together before you install the door. And I find this better than the peel and stick products, because the peel and stick products on this material, you can't get it clean enough, that old paper, that the adhesive actually wants to stick to it. It wants to bubble up and fall off, and you just have potential for water to get in here, but there is no water getting between this. So I'm going to go ahead and install the door. Maybe I'll show it to you when the door's in. It's going to take a while. I had to bring the door up in pieces. The cabin has very steep, small stairway. We could have never gotten it through the hole up there, so we cut the door laying in here. Please forgive me, owners, but we just brought it in here, laid it down very carefully, and now I'm going to reassemble it and install the door into the hole. So there you go. Doors screwed into the wall. Beautiful door, a Milgard door. These people are going to be real pleased with it. I say it's a beautiful door. I just look how easy it functions. It locks with one finger. Once we got the hole prepped, it was relatively easy to install. I still got to put the screen on it, but that's okay. And I'm going to trim it out, but I want you to see that the flange overlaps the fiberglass. You can see up there, and all the material that oozed out we just wiped down flat, so that when we put the molding in, it'll be a nice clean fit. And then we'll caulk that molding in as well, and all the way around. Okay, you can see a little bit of trim work to do on it, no big deal, but the door is in and functioning. And I want to show you the bottom corner over here. Okay, there's nothing getting through that corner. There's fiberglass in the back, flange on top, caulking oozing out of it. The complete sill is embedded in caulking. Caulking oozed out of the bottom, and we wiped that out too. I can't get the camera down there low enough to see it, but it's that is a watertight, solid installation. Or the order was real well. The door fit very nicely. Had about 1/4 inch of space everywhere around it, so that was good. Didn't have to do too much shimming. For an old house, this side of the house was particularly straight. So there you have it, and that's how you make your door waterproof. The wood that's going to go on here, the trim boards around it, really not very relative to keeping it watertight. What will happen is that trim board will be in here. These pieces are butting up to it, and even though I caulk it over time, the movement of the house, the expansion and the contraction, that'll crack and that'll let water in, but the water won't get past this here. So that's how you get a sliding glass door installed, and we're positive that it's not going to leak in a retrofit situation.